Close your eyes and imagine a city where east meets west, where domes rise above narrow streets, and where the call to prayer drifts gently across the water. This is Istanbul, the beating heart of the Ottoman Empire. For centuries, it was the center of a world that stretched from the deserts of Arabia to the mountains of the Balkans, from the Black Sea to the shores of North Africa. The Ottomans were more than conquerors. They were builders of cities, patrons of art and poetry, guardians of trade routes, and masters of an empire that endured for over 600 years. Within their world lived farmers and scholars, merchants and soldiers, sultans and slaves, each bound together by a system both vast and intricate. Tonight, we step gently into their world. We will wander through villages and bazaars, stand beneath the arches of mosques, hear the march of janissaries, and walk through the gardens of palaces. The Ottoman Empire was both a realm of grandeur and a place of daily struggles, a world of contrasts that still echoes in the stones and stories of our time. Let the modern world fade. Picture the waters of the Bosphorus, calm beneath the moonlight, and the distant glow of lanterns from a palace window. Welcome to the Ottoman Empire. Though the empire was vast and mighty, most of its people lived quiet lives, bound not to palaces or armies, but to the rhythms of the land and the markets. Imagine a small village in Anatolia. Dawn breaks softly, the sky pale with the first light. Farmers stir from their homes of stone and wood, leading oxen into the fields. The soil is dark and rich, watered by streams and rains, and here they plant wheat, barley, and lentils. Women rise early, grinding grain into flour, baking flatbread on clay ovens, their hands moving with practiced ease. Children fetch water from wells, their laughter carrying across the morning air. Life is simple, yet not without hardship. Summers bring heat, winters bring cold, and always there is the steady weight of labor. Taxes must be paid to the empire, often in grain or livestock, carried along dusty roads to local officials. Yet in return, the empire offers order. Markets are safe, roads are patrolled, and the rhythm of life continues in relative peace. Now picture the cities. In Istanbul, Bursa, or Edirne, life is louder, busier, filled with color and sound. The bazaar is the heart of every city, a maze of stalls where merchants sell spices, silk, coffee, and ceramics. Imagine walking through its narrow streets. The air is thick with the scent of roasted nuts, honeyed sweets, and fragrant tobacco. Carpets of every hue hang above the stalls, their patterns intricate, their colors deep and warm. Merchants call out softly, bargaining in voices that rise and fall like music. In the coffee houses, men gather to sip the bitter, dark drink that had become the empire's passion. They talk of politics, of trade, of poetry and stories. Smoke curls from long pipes. The sound of backgammon pieces clicking across boards punctuates the hum of conversation. The mosques mark the hours of the day. From minarets, the call to prayer drifts across the rooftops, reminding every soul of the divine rhythm that orders life. Inside, carpets soften the stone floors, the air cool and still. Worshippers kneel in silence, their voices blending into a quiet chorus of devotion. At night, the city softens. Lanterns glow along the streets, their light shimmering on the waters of the Bosphorus. The bazaar closes, the coffee houses empty, and families gather at home for simple meals. In villages, fires flicker faintly in the dark, the sounds of animals settling into barns, the stars bright above fields and hills. Life in the Ottoman world was not equal nobles and peasants, merchants and laborers, each knew their place. Yet, whether in humble villages or grand cities, daily life carried the same steady rhythm: work, prayer, family, and the quiet search for meaning beneath the vastness of empire. Every great empire begins with a single spark. For the Ottomans, that spark was a man named Osman, a frontier leader whose vision and persistence would give his name to a dynasty that lasted more than 6 centuries. Imagine Anatolia at the end of the 13th century. The once great Seljuk Sultanate had weakened, its power fading under the weight of Mongol invasions and internal divisions. Small Turkish principalities, called beyliks, sprang up across the land. Each was led by a local chief, ruling from a fortress or a small town, surrounded by warriors, farmers, and herdsmen. Among these many beyliks was the small domain of Osman, tucked near the Byzantine frontier. Osman was not born into wealth or vast power. His lands were modest, his warriors few. Yet he possessed something more valuable: determination, patience, and a belief that his destiny stretched beyond his small corner of Anatolia. He gathered followers not only through blood ties, but by inspiring them with promises of plunder, faith, and a future greater than themselves. The frontier was both dangerous and full of opportunity. To the west lay the Byzantine Empire, still proud, but weakened by centuries of decline. Border raids were common, battles frequent, villages shifting between hands. Osman led his men into these struggles, winning victories that brought both land and prestige. Legend tells of a dream he once had. In it, a great tree grew from his chest, its branches spreading across the world, shading lands near and far. To his followers, this was no mere dream, it was a prophecy, a sign that Osman's line was destined to rule a vast realm. Whether the dream was true or crafted later by storytellers, it gave shape to the Ottomans' sense of destiny, a belief that they were chosen to build something enduring. After Osman's death, around 1324, his son Orhan carried forward his vision. Orhan captured the city of Bursa, making it the first real capital of the growing state. Imagine the moment, the city's gates opening, its churches converted into mosques, its markets swelling with new life. Bursa became a symbol of permanence, proof that the Ottomans were no longer merely raiders, but rulers. Orhan also introduced reforms. He minted coins in his name, a sign of sovereignty. He established a standing army, the seeds of what would become the famed Janissary. He built mosques and baths, endowing them as places of worship, learning, and care for the people. The Ottomans were no longer just a band of warriors, they were becoming a state. In the following generations, Osman's descendants continued to expand. Murad I pushed deep into the Balkans, his armies crossing into Europe. Towns and fortresses fell under Ottoman control, and the empire began to straddle to continents. With each conquest, the Ottomans offered order. Those who submitted could keep their lands and faith, paying tribute but living in relative peace. Those who resisted faced the weight of Ottoman arms. Imagine a battlefield in the Balkans, the air thick with dust, the clash of steel ringing, banners snapping in the wind. At the center, the Ottoman Sultan rides, his horse adorned with silks, his warriors pressing forward. When the battle ends, silence falls, broken only by the cries of the wounded and the calls of commanders gathering their men. Another step in the empire's long journey has been taken. By the end of the 14th century, the Ottomans had become a true power. Their lands stretched across Anatolia and into Europe. Their rulers claimed not only the sword, but the mantle of justice and faith. Osman's small beylik had grown into a rising empire, its roots firm, its branches beginning to spread wide, just as the dream foretold. Now, picture Bursa at dusk, the new capital of the Ottomans. Its mosques glow in the fading light, their domes soft against the sky. In the markets, merchants close their stalls, voices fading into quiet. In the palace, the Sultan sits in thought, his counselors beside him, his mind turning toward the future. The empire is young, but it is strong, and its story has only just begun. As the Ottoman Empire grew in strength, its rulers sought a home that reflected their power, wealth, and vision. This home became Topkapi Palace, a sprawling complex at the very heart of Istanbul, perched on a hill where the waters of the Bosphorus, the Golden Horn, and the Sea of Marmara meet. For nearly 4 centuries, it was not only the residence of sultans, but the beating heart of the empire itself. Imagine approaching Topkapi in the 16th century. The city bustles with life markets alive with merchants, streets echoing with hoofbeats, the call to prayer drifting from countless minarets. Above it all, the palace rises, its domes and courtyards gleaming in the sunlight, its gates heavy with ornament, guarded by stern soldiers in bright uniforms. To enter Topkapi is to step into a world apart, a city within the city. The palace is not one building, but many, spread across 4 great courtyards, each with its own rhythm and life. Passing through the imperial gate, you enter the first courtyard, shaded by plane trees, lined with fountains, gardens, and storerooms. Here, merchants and petitioners once waited, the hum of voices rising softly beneath the stone arches. The second courtyard holds the kitchens, vast halls where hundreds of cooks prepared meals each day. Imagine the scent of roasting lamb, the spice of cinnamon and cloves, the rich aroma of coffee and sherbet drifting into the air. Copper cauldrons glisten in the firelight, servants moving quickly between ovens and pantries, their footsteps echoing against the stone floors. From here, one passes into the third courtyard, the true heart of the palace. This is where the sultan's private chambers and offices reside, surrounded by lush gardens, libraries, and pavilions. The audience chamber stands at its center, its walls covered in tiles of turquoise and cobalt, their patterns intricate and endless. Inside, the Sultan receives ambassadors and dignitaries. Picture the scene. A European envoy kneels, offering gifts of gold and fine cloth, while the Sultan sits silent upon a low divan, his robes heavy with silk, his turban high and white. The air is still, the only sound, the quiet rustle of fabric, the murmurs of interpreters translating words across languages. The palace also holds the harem, a place both mysterious and misunderstood. Within its labyrinth of rooms lived the Sultan's family, guarded by black eunuchs, filled with women trained in music, poetry, and dance. Though often imagined as a place of indulgence, the harem was also a center of power, where mothers of sultans, known as valid sultans, influenced politics, guiding the empire from behind carved wooden screens. Beyond these chambers lies the fourth courtyard, filled with pavilions, each a jewel of Ottoman art. The Baghdad pavilion glimmers with blue tiles, the Revan pavilion with gilded ceilings, each built to commemorate victories and triumphs. From their balconies, one could look out across the Bosphorus, the waters shimmering, ships gliding silently beneath the rising sun. The artistry of Topkapi was not only in its buildings, but in its details. Walls glittered with Iznik tiles, their patterns alive with flowers, vines, and stars. Windows glowed with stained glass, casting soft colors on marble floors. Gardens bloomed with roses and tulips. Fountains bubbled with clear water, their sound gentle and soothing in the courtyards. Every corner whispered of harmony, balance, and beauty, a reflection of the empire's ideals. Now picture the palace at twilight. The sun sets over the city, its last light glowing on domes and towers. Inside, lamps flicker to life, their warm glow illuminating the tiled halls. Servants move quietly, preparing meals, tending fires, carrying messages. In the gardens, nightingales sing softly, their voices mingling with the gentle splash of fountains. In the audience chamber, the Sultan sits in silence, his mind heavy with the burdens of empire. Beyond the gates, the city hums, but within, all is calm, ordered, timeless. Topkapi Palace was more than a residence. It was a world, a stage upon which the empire displayed its might and elegance. Though centuries have passed, and the palace now stands as a museum, its courtyards still echo with memory, each stone holding the whispers of sultans, viziers, and countless lives that passed beneath its domes. The Ottoman Empire was vast, and within its borders lived millions of people: Turks, Greeks, Armenians, Arabs, Kurds, Jews, Slavs, and many more. All were bound together by a layered society where every class had its role and duty. To understand the Ottomans is to understand this order. From the majesty of the Sultan to the humble lives of farmers and craftsmen, at the very top stood the Sultan. He was more than a ruler. He was seen as the shadow of God on earth, the ultimate authority in both worldly and spiritual matters. Imagine him seated in a richly decorated hall within Topkapi Palace, his robes shimmer with silk and gold thread, his turban towering and precise. Few dare look directly into his eyes. His word carries the weight of law, his silence the power of judgment. And yet, behind this grandeur, the Sultan is also a man responsible for an empire that stretches across continents, burdened by decisions that affect millions of lives. Beside the Sultan were his viziers, the grand ministers who carried out the work of governance. Chief among them was the Grand Vizier, whose authority often rivaled the Sultan's own. Picture the imperial council, known as the Divan. Viziers sit upon low cushions in a marble chamber, discussing taxes, war, and diplomacy. Their robes are sober, their words careful, their lives a constant balance of service and ambition. Beyond the chamber, scribes record every decision, their pens scratching steadily on parchment, ensuring that the empire's vast machinery turns without pause. Below them stood the soldiers, the most famous of which were the Janissaries. Elite, disciplined, and loyal, they formed the backbone of Ottoman power. In gleaming uniforms, with tall white hats and curved scimitars, they marched through the streets in perfect rhythm, their drums and flutes filling the air with martial music. To see the Janissaries was to be reminded of the empire's strength, its ability to project order through discipline. Yet they were not only warriors, they were also a political force, feared as much within the palace as beyond the battlefield. But most of the empire's people were not nobles or soldiers. They were the commoners, the the farmers, shepherds, craftsmen, and merchants who gave life to the cities and fields. Imagine a cobbler in the streets of Istanbul, bent over leather shoes, his hands rough, his work steady, or a farmer in the plains of Rumelia, plowing fields under the sun, his oxen trudging slowly through the soil. Their lives were hard, their rewards modest, yet they carried dignity in their labor. Without them, the bazaars would fall silent, the armies unfed, the empire itself unable to stand. There were also artisans whose skills brought beauty to daily life. Potters shaping clay into bowls glazed with blues and greens. Calligraphers writing Quranic verses in sweeping, elegant strokes. Weavers creating carpets whose patterns told stories of flowers, vines, and stars. Each craft was not only livelihood, but devotion, a way of leaving something lasting in a world where lives were often brief. The Ottoman world was diverse, its classes layered, but also connected. Farmers provided food, artisans created beauty, merchants carried goods, soldiers protected the borders, viziers guided policy, and the Sultan presided above all. Each role carried responsibility, each role held meaning. Now picture Istanbul at midday. The streets bustle with merchants, children darting between stalls, soldiers passing with steady steps, officials moving toward the palace. At the center of it all, unseen behind high walls, the Sultan sits in quiet reflection, the empire flowing around him like a great river. The Ottomans believed in order, and their society reflected it. From sultan to shepherd, vizier to villager, each soul was a thread in the fabric of empire, strong only when woven together. Among all the armies of the world, few were as feared or as unique as the Janissaries, the elite soldiers of the Ottoman sultans. For centuries, their name carried weight across Europe and the Middle East. To hear their drums was to feel the approach of power. To see their ranks was to glimpse the strength of the empire itself. The Janissaries were born of a system called the Devshirme. From the provinces of the empire, especially in the Balkans, Christian boys were taken as tribute, chosen for their strength and intelligence. Brought to Istanbul, they were converted to Islam, educated and trained. Though taken from their families, they were given opportunities that few others could dream of, to rise through merit, to become part of the empire's most honored corps, and sometimes even to ascend into positions of great influence. Imagine a young boy arriving at the barracks of the Janissaries. The stone walls loom above, the sound of marching feet echoing across the courtyard. He is handed simple clothes, taught new prayers, and slowly shaped into a soldier. Days are filled with drills, standing in formation beneath the sun, learning to handle bows, muskets, and curved swords. Nights are spent in prayer and study, discipline shaping body and mind alike. Their barracks, the Janissary Aga's house, was both school and home. Meals were eaten communally, often in silence. Bowls of lentils, rice, and bread shared equally. They lived as brothers, bound not by blood, but by oath. This unity became their strength. In battle, they moved as one, unshaken by fear, their trust in one another absolute. When the Janissaries marched, their presence was unmistakable. Picture a column moving through Istanbul. Tall hats of white felt crowned their heads, their long coats bright with color. Drums pound in steady rhythm. Flutes and horns pierce the air with sharp notes. People step aside as they pass, for to see the Janissaries was to witness the very power of the Sultan walking through the streets. On the battlefield, they were relentless. Armed at first with bows and later with muskets, they stood at the front lines, their ranks disciplined, their volleys precise. Behind them, their drums beat like thunder, filling allies with courage and enemies with dread. In sieges, they stormed walls with ladders, their chants echoing against stone. In open battle, they advanced as a single body, unshaken by chaos around them. Yet the Janissaries were more than soldiers. They were also a political force. Over time, their loyalty shifted not only to the Sultan, but to their own cores. They demanded privileges, grew wealthy, and sometimes even influenced the throne itself. Sultans relied on them, but also feared their power, knowing that the Janissaries could make or break rulers. Still, in their prime, they were unmatched. European envoys wrote of their discipline, their silence, their ability to endure hardship without complaint. To face the Janissaries was to face the very heart of the Ottoman war machine. Now picture them at rest after a campaign. Their weapons are stacked neatly, their armor set aside. In their barracks, the air is filled with the smell of stewed lentils and warm bread. Some sit quietly in prayer, others talk in low voices, their bonds unshaken by the trials of war. Outside, the city sleeps, while within, the empire's guardians prepare for another dawn. The Janissaries were more than soldiers. They were symbols of order, discipline, and the might of the Ottoman state. Though centuries have passed since their last march, their name still lingers, carried in memory as one of history's most remarkable military corps. The Ottoman Empire was not only a realm of soldiers and sultans, it was also a world of merchants, caravans, and markets that pulsed with life. At the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa, the empire became the beating heart of global trade, where silks from China, spices from India, gold from Africa, and wool from Europe all met beneath its domes and arches. Imagine entering the Grand Bazaar of Istanbul in the 16th century. Its vaulted ceilings arch high above, painted with colors that glow in the lantern light. Narrow lanes wind like rivers, each devoted to a craft, silks in one, carpets in another, spices and perfumes in yet another. The air is alive with scent, cinnamon, cloves, rosewater, leather, and tobacco. Merchants sit before their stalls, their goods spread in dazzling array, their voices rising in soft negotiation. Caravans brought wealth across long and perilous routes. From the east, camels trudged slowly across deserts, their backs laden with silk, porcelain, and tea. From India came pepper, ginger, and indigo dye. From Africa, ivory and gold glimmered in the markets. Ottoman merchants carried these goods onward to Venice, Genoa, and beyond. Their ships sailing across the Mediterranean, their caravans winding through mountain passes. The Silk Road, ancient long before the Ottomans, lived on through their lands. Inns known as caravanserais dotted the routes. Great stone courtyards where weary travelers could rest, their camels watered, their goods secured behind thick gates. Picture one at night. Torches flicker in the archways. Merchants gather by fires, sipping hot tea, trading tales of distant lands. Outside, the wind sweeps across the steppe, but within the walls there is warmth, safety, and the steady murmur of human connection. In the markets, every object told a story. A roll of silk carried whispers of Chinese looms. A jar of coffee beans spoke of Yemen's hills. A piece of porcelain reflected the kilns of faraway. To hold such an item was to touch another world, its journey etched into every thread, every glaze, every grain. The Ottomans themselves became masters of trade. Their artisans crafted carpets whose patterns spread across Europe. Their tiles decorated palaces as far away as Vienna. Their coffee houses introduced a drink that would one day circle the globe. Even their ships carried more than goods. They carried culture, shaping tastes, styles, and habits across continents. Trade was also a meeting of faiths and tongues. In a single market, you might hear Turkish, Greek, Armenian, Arabic, Persian, and Italian spoken, each voice blending into a harmony of commerce. Jews, Christians, and Muslims bargained side by side, their lives tied not only by empire, but by the exchange of goods and trust. Now picture Istanbul at twilight, the markets close, their stalls shuttered, the smell of spices lingering in the cool air. Along the harbor, ships creak gently, their sails furled, their holds heavy with goods from distant lands. Caravans rest outside the city walls, their bells tinkling softly as camels settle to the ground. In the distance, the domes of mosques glow faintly against the darkening sky, the city a jewel of trade and faith. The Ottoman Empire thrived because it connected worlds. Through its markets and roads, it became not only a military power, but an economic bridge between East and West. Its bazaars still stand, its caravanserais still echo with memory, and its role as a crossroads of civilization remains one of its most enduring legacies. In the Ottoman Empire, faith was not just a private devotion, it was the very thread that bound society together. Islam was at the heart of the empire, shaping its laws, its rhythms of daily life, its art, and even its architecture. Lived people of many faiths, Christians, Jews, and others, each allowed their place, though under the guiding shadow of Islam. The empire's mosques were more than places of worship. They were schools, community centers, and symbols of power. Imagine standing before the Sulaimani Mosque in Istanbul. Its dome rises high above the city, its minarets slender and tall, piercing the sky. From its courtyards, the view stretches across the Bosphorus, the Golden Horn, and the hills beyond. Inside, the light filters softly through stained glass, casting patterns of blue and gold upon the carpets. The air is cool and hushed, the scent of incense lingering faintly as voices rise in prayer. Mosques marked the hours of the day. 5 times, the call to prayer drifted across the rooftops, reminding all of their connection to God. In small villages, a single minaret stood above homes of mud and stone. In great cities, dozens of voices echoed across the streets, weaving together in a chorus that shaped the rhythm of life. At the center of religious life was the ulama, the scholars and jurists of Islam. They studied the Quran, interpreted the law, and guided the faithful in matters both spiritual and practical. Imagine a classroom within a mosque's madrasa. Students sit cross-legged on mats, their teachers reading from heavy manuscripts. Their voices calm, their words deliberate. The walls are lined with shelves of books, their pages filled with knowledge carried across centuries. The madrasa is quiet, yet alive with thought, shaping generations of scholars, judges, and imams. The Ottomans also recognized the importance of justice. The Sharia, or Islamic law, was the foundation, but it was complemented by Qanun, secular laws issued by the Sultan. Judges, known as qadis, traveled throughout the empire, ensuring order in cities and villages. They listened to disputes, weighed testimony, and delivered verdicts. To sit before a qadi was to place your trust in both faith and empire, knowing that fairness was sought in the balance of divine and worldly law. Yet the Ottoman religious world was not only Muslim. The empire was home to vast Christian and Jewish communities, each granted protection as people of the book. They paid special taxes and lived under certain restrictions, but they also kept their churches, synagogues, and schools. In Istanbul, the bells of churches and the songs of synagogues mingled with the call to prayer, a reminder that the empire was as much a tapestry of diversity as it was of unity. Religion also inspired beauty. The calligraphy adorning mosques flowed like poetry across tiles and domes. Gardens within mosque complexes bloomed with roses and tulips, tended as acts of devotion. Fountains gurgled in courtyards, offering water to the thirsty, each drop seen as a gift from God. To pray in such a place was to feel not only faith, but Python echo of paradise on earth. Now picture an evening in Istanbul. The sun sets, the city bathed in soft golden light. From the hills, the muezzin's voice rises deep and resonant, answered by others across the city. Lights glow in mosque windows, carpets are unrolled, families gather in lines for prayer. The city quiets, the bustle of trade and chatter fading into the gentle murmur of devotion. For the Ottomans, religion was not a separate sphere, was life itself. It guided the farmer in his fields, the judge in his court, the sultan in his palace, and the scholar in his books. It gave order to the empire, meaning to its struggles, and beauty to its stones. In the Ottoman Empire, family was the foundation of daily life. Across villages, towns, and cities, men and women built their worlds around home, kinship, and tradition. Yet in the heart of the empire, within the walls of Topkapi Palace, there existed another world entirely, the harem. To understand the Ottomans, one must look at both the ordinary homes of common people and the extraordinary chambers of the palace. Imagine a modest household in an Anatolian village. The home is small, with walls of stone and a roof of wood. A courtyard lies at its center, shaded by a fig tree, where children play while mothers prepare meals. Women manage the rhythm of the house, grinding wheat into flour, weaving wool into cloth, tending to gardens of herbs and vegetables. Their hands are never idle, their labor as vital as the men's work in fields or workshops. Marriage was central. Families arranged unions, often considering alliances of trade, wealth, or land. Wedding celebrations filled streets with music, drums, and laughter. The bride adorned with henna and bright scarves. In marriage, women held the keys to the household, managing food, finances, and the education of children. Though society was patriarchal, women's roles carried deep respect, for they were the keepers of family honor and continuity. In cities, women appeared often in markets, selling goods, managing shops, or purchasing daily necessities. They moved within neighborhoods, where bonds of trust and support tied families together. Some became midwives, healers, or teachers, passing knowledge from one generation to the next. And yet, beyond these ordinary rhythms, stood the world of the imperial harem. Contrary to many myths, the harem was not simply a place of indulgence, but a center of politics, culture, and family life within the palace. Behind its gates lived the sultan's wives, concubines, children, and the powerful women known as valid sultans, the mothers of reigning sultans, whose influence often shaped the empire itself. Picture the harem's chambers. Long corridors lead to rooms adorned with Iznik tiles of cobalt and turquoise, their patterns endless with vines and blossoms. Light filters through latticed windows, casting soft shadows on carpets. Within these chambers, women are trained not only in music and dance, but in poetry, calligraphy, and languages. Many came from faraway lands, brought as captives or gifts, their lives transformed by fate into service within the palace. At the center of this world stood the valid sultan. She held authority not only over the harem, but often over the empire's politics. Advising her son, she influenced appointments, policies, and alliances. To underestimate her was to misunderstand the quiet yet immense power that moved behind the palace's walls. Children of the sultan grew up here as well, educated by tutors, guided by mothers and nurses, prepared for lives of rule or exile. The harem was both a sanctuary and a prison, filled with beauty, yet bound by strict rules and hierarchies. Within its walls, alliances were formed, rivalries simmered, and the future of the empire was often decided in whispers and letters rather than in battlefields. Now picture the harem at night. The palace glows softly with lanterns, their light shimmering on tiled walls. In one chamber, women sing songs, accompanied by the gentle strum of a lute. In another, children listen to stories of heroes and prophets, their eyes heavy with sleep. In the valid sultan's quarters, letters are read by candlelight, decisions shaping the empire's future in silence. For the Ottomans, women and family were not only private matters, they were the quiet engine of society. From the humblest village home to the most ornate palace chamber, they sustained life, nurtured children, and, in their own ways, guided the empire forward. Among the many sultans of the Ottoman Empire, one name shines above all: Suleiman I, known in the West as Suleiman the Magnificent, and in his own realm as Kanuni Sultan, Suleiman the Lawgiver. His reign, stretching from 1520 to 1566, marked the very height of Ottoman power, when the empire stood as one of the greatest in the world. Imagine Istanbul in the middle of the 16th century. The city is alive with trade, its harbors filled with ships from every corner of the Mediterranean. The domes of new mosques rise into the sky, their minarets slender and elegant. Palaces and schools expand, markets hum with the voices of thousands. It is an age of prosperity, confidence, and grandeur. Suleiman was both warrior and statesman. On the battlefield, he led his armies to victories that stretched the empire's borders farther than ever before. Hungary fell beneath his banners, and his armies reached as far as Vienna. Across the seas, Ottoman fleets commanded the eastern Mediterranean, their ships swift and disciplined, their cannons thunderous against enemies. Two allies, Suleiman was a powerful protector. Two enemies, a figure of awe and dread. Yet Suleiman was not remembered only for conquest. At home, he brought order through law. He codified the empire's legal system, balancing the Sharia with imperial decrees. His reforms touched every corner of society: taxes, property, trade, and justice. To his people, he was not only a conqueror, but a giver of order, a sultan who ruled with both strength and fairness. Culture flourished under his reign. Poets and calligraphers found patrons, architects raised new wonders, and scholars debated in the courtyards of madrasas. Among these creators was the great architect Mimar Sinan, whose works reshaped the very skyline of Istanbul. His mosques, graceful, balanced, filled with light, became living symbols of Ottoman beauty. Imagine standing beneath the dome of the Suleimani Mosque, sunlight streaming through its windows. The space, vast yet serene, echoing softly with the murmur of prayers. Suleiman's court was also marked by love and intrigue. His wife, Harem Sultan, once a concubine from the harem, rose to become his partner and advisor. Together, they shaped policy, built charitable works, and strengthened the dynasty. Their story remains one of the most famous romances of the Ottoman world, a tale of power and devotion within the palace walls. Now picture Istanbul during a festival in Suleiman's reign. The streets are filled with music, drums, and flutes. Lanterns glow along the avenues, their light reflected in the Bosphorus. Crowds cheer as parades of soldiers, artisans, and guilds pass by, each group showing their craft and pride. The Sultan himself watches from a balcony, his robes glittering in the lamplight, his presence both distant and near. For the Ottomans, this was their golden age. The empire's lands stretched from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia, from the Black Sea to the shores of North Africa. Its wealth, culture, and might made it a power unmatched. To live in this time was to feel the confidence of empire, the sense that its greatness would last forever. And yet, like all golden ages, it was fragile. The brilliance of Suleiman's reign cast long shadows that would not be easy to sustain. But in the moment beneath his rule, the Ottoman Empire stood radiant, a civilization at its height, glowing with power, order, and beauty. No empire, no matter how vast or powerful, lasts forever. For the Ottomans, the golden age of Suleiman was followed by centuries of struggle, moments of brilliance, but also slow decline. Yet even as power faded, the legacy of the empire endured, shaping lands and peoples long after its fall. After Suleiman, the empire remained strong, but the challenges grew heavier. Wars drained its wealth, rival powers rose in Europe, and trade routes shifted with the discovery of the Americas. The once mighty Janissaries grew restless and difficult to control, their loyalty no longer as firm as before. Palace intrigues multiplied, with sultans often overshadowed by advisors, viziers, and the harem. Still, the empire endured. New mosques rose, markets bustled, caravans crossed deserts, ships sailed across the seas. For centuries, Istanbul remained one of the great cities of the world, a place where cultures met, where East and West mingled beneath domes and towers. Even in decline, the Ottomans remained a symbol of order, faith, and endurance. By the 19th century, however, the strain was undeniable. European powers advanced, technology changed, and the empire struggled to adapt. Reformers sought to modernize, building railways, schools, and armies modeled on the West. Yet the empire's vastness made change slow, its traditions hard to alter. Piece by piece, lands slipped away. Greece, the Balkans, North African till. At last, only the heartlands remained. In the early 20th century, the empire finally fell, giving way to a new era, a new republic rising from its ruins. But though the Ottomans were gone, their influence lived on. Their architecture still crowns skylines, their laws echo in traditions, their foods and music flow through daily life. The empire is gone, yet its memory is alive in the stones of mosques, the songs of minarets, the stories of people who trace their roots to its time. Now picture Istanbul at twilight today. The domes of Suleimani still glow in the setting sun. The call to prayer drifts across the Bosphorus, and the Grand Bazaar still hums with life. The Ottomans may have passed, but their world remains close, woven into the very fabric of the present. And so, our journey through the Ottoman Empire comes to its end. We have walked the quiet lanes of villages and the crowded stalls of bazaars. We have entered Topkapi Palace, seen the might of janissaries, and listened to prayers beneath the domes of mosques. We have stood in the shadow of Suleiman's reign, felt the brilliance of empire, and watched its slow fading into history. The Ottomans remind us that history is not only made of wars and rulers, but of families, merchants, artisans, and prayers whispered in the night. Their story is vast, filled with triumphs and struggles, beauty and burden. As you rest now, let the images soften in your mind. Lanterns glowing in palace courtyards, the quiet splash of a fountain in a mosque garden, the hum of voices in a market at dusk. Let the sounds of history fade into silence, like waves upon the Bosphorus. The empire is gone, but its echoes remain. And tonight, those echoes guide you not into conquest or duty, but into calm, carrying you gently into the peace of sleep.